Today, we're going to poke a hole in a belief most of us hold as gospel truth about success at work. It's the kind of thing you hear in business schools, in leadership seminars, pretty much everywhere. But what if a huge global data set tells us that in some of the most high-performing companies, that core belief isn't just wrong, it's actually completely backward? Okay, let's get into it.
So, first, let's just lay out the conventional wisdom, right? In today's world, with all its focus on collaboration and people-first culture, there is one skill that's always held up as the absolute key to being a great leader and building a great team.
And yeah, you guessed it, that skill is empathy. The idea makes total sense. If you can understand and share the feelings of your colleagues, you build trust, you boost morale, and all of that good stuff drives performance. It's basically the golden rule of modern management, an idea so common we don't even think to question it. But this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. Because the moment you stop going with gut feelings and you actually look at the hard data, a very different and honestly a pretty unsettling picture starts to take shape. Just look at this number. -0.0821. That is the actual statistical correlation between empathy and success in the workplace, pulled from a study of over 3,000 people across the globe. And yes, you are seeing that minus sign correctly. In certain kinds of high-performance systems, the more empathy you demonstrate, the less successful you are perceived to be. Wild, right? So what kind of system are we talking about here? Well, this weird effect shows up in what's called an orange value system. The easiest way to think about this is that classic Wall Street vibe, or maybe a hyper-growth tech startup. It's a culture that absolutely worships efficiency, hard numbers, metrics, and return on investment. It's a world where, at the end of the day, results are the only thing that matters. And check this out. It's not a one-off thing. Data from other orange systems shows the exact same pattern. Look here. Not only is empathy negatively correlated with success, but so is honesty. But adaptability, that's a positive. So what does this tell us? It tells us the system doesn't really care if you're a good person. It cares if you're a productive unit. Measurable output is just a much, much stronger signal of success than your ability to connect with other humans. And this is where it gets really interesting. The exact same leadership approach gets interpreted in completely different ways depending on the company's underlying culture. In that orange system we're talking about, focusing on empathy is just seen as an inefficient cost. It's slowing things down. In a more traditional, by-the-book culture, it might look like a breakdown of discipline and accountability. And in a really power-hungry environment, it's just a weakness that can be exploited. Same behavior, totally different outcomes. So how does this actually happen? Well, the mechanism behind it is painfully simple. In these kinds of systems, if you can't put a number on it, it might as well not exist. Things like team cohesion, trust, psychological safety, we all know they're vital, right? But they don't fit neatly on a quarterly performance spreadsheet. And in a world that's run by those spreadsheets, anything that can't be quantified slowly just becomes invisible. Now let's really trace this out, because this isn't just some interesting data point. This dynamic has real, tangible, and often devastating consequences for people and for the companies they work for. So here's what this actually looks like on the ground. You have these amazing, empathetic leaders, the ones who build incredible teams, who mentor people, and their careers just plateau. They hit a ceiling. Meanwhile, their colleagues who just focus on their own individual metrics get fast-tracked for promotions. That critical work of building trust gets written off by HR as a soft skill, and the big promotions always go to the person with the most impressive KPIs, not the person with the most cohesive team. And this sets off a really dangerous domino effect. First, the signals of what the company actually values get all twisted. Then, the system starts rewarding the wrong kind of behavior. It rewards being transactional over being collaborative. Pretty soon, your best people start to leave. All that empathetic talent walks right out the door. And what are you left with? Systemic cynicism. A culture where nobody trusts each other because they've all seen that the company's stated values and its actual rewards are two completely different things. This gap just widens silently until one day, the whole thing snaps. And all of this leaves us with one final and really critical question. Look, the problem isn't that empathy is worthless. Of course it's not. The problem is what happens when you work in a system that is literally blind to its value. So think about your own workplace. What gets measured? What really gets rewarded? And what happens when your most valuable skill, the very thing that makes you and your team truly great, is one of them?